Termites! It's night 30. How great is that? Look what did I show you these last year? Now I sound like my mother. Did I? Not remembering it did. These are from Kroger. They're like $12. I've also seen them at Lowe's. And those bulbs are just in water. And then this was all green. There were no, and then they bloom. They're seriously fun for $12. They last longer than flowers from the, the grocery store. Although my Kroger has a sale part of flowers. And you'd think it was a shit show. And I think it's wonderful. What are we drinking? Most importantly, I already said, 9:30. It's great. Yuengling Flight, which is their answer to Mick Ultra. And I always like a real Yuengling, as like when it's cold out, it's just a delicious beer. But the Flight's pretty good. I wouldn't say no to it. And we're drinking out of my what? My Swig and Swine. Swig and Swine. It's a barbecue place in Charleston. It's wonderful. If you're ever in Charleston, Google Swig and Swine. There's a few locations, I think, and it's the first stop me and Louis make out of the airport, right to Swig and Swine when we go. Okay, let's get back. We're gonna finish this book too soon. So sad. Doolittle's dead. Doolittle Lynn is dead, and we left off with death carries grief. It also carries forgiveness. That's where I think I stopped. People had seen me and do argue and throw punches. They'd seen them drunk, and so had I. I've been embarrassed many a time by the way he behaved in front of folks with me right there in the room, but none of that mattered. Do, who was no angel, looked like one that night. It was our time together. Its memory will last me for a lifetime. On the day of the funeral, they took Du's body from our house to the church. I was still in my bedroom dressing for Du's service, and the light came on, but I hadn't touched the switch. Then it went off, then on, and off again, and no one touched the switch. And there was no electrical short. I believe it was Du's way of telling me he was home. What would have been funnier is if a jar of string beans had flown through her bedroom. Then you'd really know Du was home. Oh, wow. Wouldn't that be great if a ghost could, do something funny and poignant at the same time? To me, Du's funeral was a lot like Jack Benny's. I don't remember much about it. The church was filled. The crowd overflowed into the yard. Some of the veteran members of the Grand Ole Opry was on hand, but I can't remember which ones, except for Johnny Wright and Kitty Wells. I often wish that I'd given Du a military funeral since he'd been in the Army. I just wasn't thinking at all. I was just going through the motions. Ernest Ray had been the most misbehaved child I'd ever had. Whew, that's probably saying a lot out of this gang I'm saying too. He had his scrapes with the law and more, but I'll tell you something, he loves his mother, and he was right by my side. Me and him argues. It says argues, I didn't make that up. And he says awful things about me. What? But I'd pity the poor soul that ever said anything bad about me to Ernest Ray. Well, why is he cussing you out and stuff? And are you supporting him? Me and him argues, and he says awful things about me. Well, that's terrible. I don't remember a word of what said at the funeral. I do remember leaving the church afterwards when me and the kids got into what they called the family car. It slowly followed Du, whose body lay inside a coffin on a horse-drawn carriage. Preacher said a few words at the graveside while people stood with hands folded and eyes lowered the way they do them type of things. The only other sounds, once again, were the sounds of nature. The birds sang, the wind blew. The earth went on as if nothing was wrong. Nothing was wrong in my world either. At that moment, I didn't have no world. Oh, Lord. The children vented their grief in their own ways. They don't like to talk about it to me or to anybody else. I've never seen a family like ours. Well, do something. We love each other, but we don't share everything. There are things about about me that my kids don't know to this day, and vice versa. Well, that's good. That's fine. That's healthy. Nobody needs to know everything. Nobody. Maybe your dog. That's about it. Or a cat. Something that ain't gonna talk. Not everything. There is such things called privacy. After Dew passed, I was alone in the big house that Dew was building for me and him. People who worked on the ranch came and went, but without Dew, I was alone. I told Rosie I couldn't stand it, and I went to my Nashville home to get away from all the memories. Before I left, me, Rosie, and Doc Turner, me, Rosie, that is poorly written. Me, Rosie, and Doc Turner and his wife from Kentucky sat at the kitchen table one day as she looked up at our glass roof. Leaves had stacked so high on the top of the roof they was beginning to block the sunlight. Now, how are we going to get them leaves off the roof? Rosie said. We couldn't crawl across it. We'd fall through the glass. I wish a strong wind would come along and just blow them leaves away, Rosie said, but there was no wind blowing. She had just spoken them words when a gust came from nowhere. Not one leaf was left on the roof. I think Dew heard Rosie and asked God for a favor to send me some wind. Chapter 27, Termites. The long road back. For you page nerds, we're on page 206. After Dew died, I moved into my Nashville house and stayed there for a year. I was so out of touch with the world right then. I thought I'd only been away from Hurricane Mills for a couple months, but it was a year before I saw the ranch again. I couldn't take looking at anything out there. Dew's presence was in the house and on the property. It was like he was out there on one of his tractors, a bulldozer, or just riding around in his pickup truck checking to see things was getting done. I'd spent years trying to figure out how I could live without Dew if the day come when we divorced. The idea of me living without him because he was dead hadn't even entered my mind until the end was near. Oh, my Lord, with his drinking, it would have entered my mind every day. How much can your liver take? When I started losing Dew piece by piece, I lost half of myself. I got myself together back in stages and pieces. At first, I holed up in Nashville at Rosie's, sometimes sleeping for days, sometimes going without sleep. The rash I'd got when Dew was sick got worse. It would come on like a fury, then retreat, then come back again. I wish you all could have seen me. Well, no, I don't. If pictures of me had gotten out during that time, I don't know what people would have thought. Maybe they thought I'd been taken over by an alien. No, I don't think anybody would have thought that. They'd have thought, she is having an allergic reaction or some autoimmune reaction to something. I know I was going through depression, but when you consider that rash all over my body, the amount of stress it took to keep it around for months, you got to figure that I had a nervous breakdown. Talk about somebody needing therapy. Once again, spelled T-H-U-R-P-Y. Therapy. Like Slurpee, except therapy. Time didn't have no meaning for me, and neither did money. I couldn't have told you the day, the month, or even the year. I did some foolish things, like buying a full-length fur coat when the temperature in Tennessee was still in the 90-degree range. What? That cost a lot of money. I bet it did. Money I didn't really have after all Dew's doctoring was paid for. On top of that, it wasn't a good color on me. Oh, Lord. And I needed it like I needed another hole in my head, but I bought it. By December 1996, the rash could be at least covered up with stage makeup, and my manager, Lane, reminded me that I'd committed to play the Grand Ole Opry. Well, you can't cancel on the Grand Ole Opry. You go get your ass down there. It really hit me when I picked up a newspaper and seen the show advertised. Yep, well, that's going to be your headshot. Then the radio station started making a big deal out of the fact that this would be my first appearance since losing Dew. They was making it sound like some sort of comeback performance, even though I was only supposed to do one song. Well, one thing at a time, just like picking yourself back up a piece at a time. You're going to do one song at a time. Maybe that's how I'll go back out on the road. Just go somewhere and do one joke. Thank you. Go to the next town, 2 jokes. I think I can get through more than that, though. I don't know. Who knows, though? The more I thought about that one song, the more anxious I got. I started shaking and feeling sick, working myself up into full-blown anxiety attack. I performed sick many, many times, sometimes singing long concerts with a migraine headache that almost blinded me. But thinking about one piddly old song at the Opry froze me. Hours before the show, I told Rosie to get Lane on the phone and tell him I was canceling. Lane run right over. I heard him coming up the stairs. Every footstep upset me more. Well, throw some string beans at him. Fuck him. I guess he knowed how I'd be. Knowed. I did not make that up. That is how it is written. I guess he knowed how I'd be because all of a sudden the footsteps stopped. What he done, though, was take off his shoes. He walked in on quite a sight. Rosie, Jackie, my hairdresser, sitting there watching me pace the floor, crying, saying I couldn't do it. They wasn't able to get through to me at all. You can call the opera and tell him I ain't coming, I said the minute he walked in. Lane didn't say nothing. He didn't argue one bit. He handed me the phone. He handed the phone to me. Here, Loretta, he said real polite. I'll dial the opera manager. You tell him yourself. You're my manager, I yelled. He shook his head. And you're the person who promised to do the show. You'll have to be the one to tell him you're backing out. I yelled and carried on for almost an hour. I knowed things was getting out of hand because by that time television crews would be arriving at the Opera House, setting up interviews with me, getting set up for interviews with me. I know that as well as anything. Finally, I gave in. All right, I said. Don't call nobody. Don't nobody call nobody. Wow. I'll go do the show. And I did just that, although I can't tell you to this day what I sung. Shoot, I couldn't even tell you who introduced me. Sometime after I'd done it, I told somebody that Roy Acuff introduced me that night. They looked at me like I was goofy. What's the matter? I asked. Acuff did introduce me the first night back. Not unless he'd done it from his grave, the person said. Acuff's been dead for over 4 years. Oh, fuck. That's what I got to say to that. That is a terrible misfire. But I will say going to the opera that night helped me start to get back into show business. It's a good thing because the music helped me start to feel like I was alive again. I didn't jump back into the business, though. I more or less crawled. In February of 1997, I'd done the Statler's television show, and later that month, I did not know the Statler brothers had a television show. In 1997? Huh. And later that month, a Florida promoter called and asked if I was up to doing some shows in Florida. I thought on that long and hard. And finally, I said I'd do it. It was dang strange to be thinking about being on the road the way I was doing right then. I'd done 1,000 one-nighters, getting back on the bus after the show, riding the night to the next stop, then playing another show and starting all over again. All of a sudden, that seemed impossible. And the year before Dude died, I took him with me no matter where he was. If he was at home, I thought about him. I'd wonder whether he was working on the farm, drinking with some fellows at the campgrounds, running with women, you name it. I wondered and worried about it. Now I was going out with the knowledge that he was not doing any of those things. He was buried on a hill. That's right. The main thing I worried about that winter was whether Dude was cold up there in his grave. Whew. I worked with Ernest Ray and my keyboard player, Gene Dunlap, to get the band back. Since I'd let mine go when Dude was sick, that led to a situation I regret. Some of them boys from the old coal miners was available, and some was working for other folks. I will not ever hire a musician away from anybody else. There's lots in the business who'll steal a good picker from you in a minute. I ain't one of them. Ernest Tubb taught me that. He wasn't one to steal musicians either. In the end, there was at least one musician who wished he'd been asked no matter what he was doing at the time. I hated the idea that he felt overlooked because that wasn't the way it happened at all. But the new Coal Miners was a real good band, and I reckon they'll be with me as long as I want to play. I was nervous as a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. What? I'm going to have to think about that again. A long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. Okie-dokie. Cats are pretty agile. I don't really know that they would care about that. I was nervous, but we played them Florida shows. I think we've done a good job on them. You can work with it whether your heart's sick or not, and work especially when you have fans in your corner can pull you back together. One person made a big difference is my granddaughter, Tala, T-A-L-A, I don't know. Taylor, probably. Taylor, like Layla. Ernest Ray's daughter. She was always upbeat and mischievous, just like her daddy. In the months before Dude died, me and Taylor become more like girlfriends than grandma and grandbaby. I took her on the road. She sang a couple songs with the band. Owen Bradley died in 1997. He'd been in the hospital with some flu symptoms, but they must have thought he was better because they released him after he'd come home. He got real sick all of a sudden, and that time he didn't make it. Now they got a little park in Music Road dedicated to Owen. He was one of the best this town's ever seen. First time I come back to a recording studio after Dude's death was in March 1997 to do a gospel album that Heartland Records had been after me to do. God is on my mind a lot, especially in the years after I lost Dew. Because of touring, I never got settled on one particular church, but there's many times that bus roared down the road 70 miles an hour with me praying all along the way. Jerry Kennedy produced the album. It was almost like having Owen Bradley back. Jerry's produced so many great people over the years. Tom T. Hall, Statler Brothers, Reba, Johnny Rodriguez. Jerry was from the old school, like me and Owen. Doing them sessions brought my spirits back up considerably. My twins was having success with their career too, and that was good to see. They signed with Warner, and they put a self-titled album out. Them two girls have a lot of talent. They wrote 8 of the songs on that album, and they're strong songs too. I'm gonna have to go listen to that. The twins, Loretta twins, the Lynn twins. What? I don't know what they go by. They wrote 8 of them songs, strong songs. I gotta say it. They done it without my help. They started playing shows at Tootsie's Orchid Lounge, a little bar that became legendary during them early years of the Opry. All them Opry stars and songwriters hung out there. It's still there too. You can go to Tootsie's anytime you want. Hank Williams, Farron Young, Willie Nelson, Roger Miller, Harlan Howard. Doolittle Lynn hung out there too. Once the twins come along, he'd take them with him. Isn't that nice, Daddy? Gonna take you on down to the bar. By the time it was 3 years old, Patsy and Peggy, that's their names, Patsy and Peggy was singing and dancing on the bar. Tootsie's would reward them for their show with Coca-Colas and gum. The girls felt they was practically raised there. My sister have twins, and they had a favorite bar. It was called Pickle Pete's, and then it got wrecked, and we were so sad because it's where the girls liked to dance when they were 5. It was their favorite dance floor. It was more of a place to get a hamburger type bar, but you know what I mean. The girls fell the river, but when they got serious about their careers, they started playing Tootsies under the name the Honkabillies. I think I would have come up with something different. Ain't nobody knowed they was my kids. I suppose some folks realized it, but it wasn't known all over town. And a lot of record people was new. A lot of the record people was new. One night, a representative from Warner come in, got really excited about the new duo. The girls not only put on a show with their music, they kid around a lot, tell jokes, and really entertain. Just all-around entertainers. They was offered a deal before the label realized they was second-generation show business. Even though the label knew their names was Lynn, they didn't make the connection. It was just like my girls to drop the information into the conversation, kind of sneaky-like. Sneaky-like, in case you were wondering, is one word. And I'm using that the next time I play Scrabble. And if anybody says, fuck you, that's not a word, I'm going to go, well, let's go to page 211 of Still Woman Enough, and I'm going to show you it is in print. Therefore, it is a word, sneaky-like, and I like it. I'm going to get gone real sneaky-like. How about that for a sentence? Use it in a sentence. I'm going to get gone real sneaky-like. This one person at Warner was telling the girls all about the label when one of them up and says, oh, we know the label. Our aunt was on it for years. Who's your aunt, the fellow asked. Crystal Gale, they said. And then it started dawning on the fella. Then who is your mother? Loretta Lynn. Guy like to fell off his chair. I bet he was surprised they hadn't tried to use their names to get that break or have their mama call the label or something, but that ain't the way the two of them operate. They're sneaky like. They got a lot of Doolittle in them. They got a lot of me and a lot of Doolittle in them. Patsy and Peggy look exactly alike, but the minute they start to talk, you can tell them apart. Peggy's the oldest. She'll speak right up on any subject you want to mention. Patsy started out more bashful, and now she's quite a go-getter. She writes songs, produces, and between her and her husband, Philip Russell, they have 7 children. She makes raising them look easy, too. Peggy, well, maybe she ain't got some drunk throwing string beans around the kitchen that you canned all day in a jar or a can, however you do that. I don't know. Maybe Philip's a nice person that isn't a crazy drunk person. Peggy's married to Mark Marchetti, who works for my publishing company. Him and Peggy are expecting their first baby. Okay, that's a good place to stop right there. I say we got, oh my God, I think we only have one more night. I don't know, it might be 2. All right, termites. That's it for now. And that's all I got. Kroger, Lowe's, many colors. I don't really think I knew those were going to be purple. I don't know which book we're going to read. You can vote. Liberace, George Jones. I've scanned them. They're both very good. Very different, obviously. Maybe we get away from country for a little bit. Maybe we go to Liberace. Something different. He's from Wisconsin. Maybe we should go to Wisconsin for a while and see what it would be like to be Liberace in Wisconsin. I don't see that as a good match. Would you like some cheese curds and a beer, sir? No. I don't see him doing that. I would in a minute. And I do when I'm there. Every time Lewis and I have gone to Wisconsin, I feel like we need to check into some sort of hospital after we're done being there. And it doesn't even stop when we leave at the airport because there's cheese curds available for sale at the airport in a giant freezer. It's wonderful. All right, termites. That's it. You got your sheet pulled up? Are you comfortable? Are you cozy? Still cold. Gonna be cold for at least about 6 more weeks in places of the country that have seasons. I know you California termites, of rain and wind. It sounds bad out there. All right, pull your sheet up. Cozy? You're a good termite. You're a worthy termite. That's it now. Night-night, termites.